What's going on, everybody? I hope you had a good weekend. We have a lot to talk about here. We have CleanSpark stock's earnings coming up. We're also going to look at their chart there. We also have something going on with Bitcoin. We saw a breakout of our descending resistance over the weekend, but it looks like we're starting to retest it. And last week, we saw something very interesting. We saw IBIT posting outflows, while GBTC posted their first inflows. And it's very funny that that happened within days of each other. Our first outflow from IBIT, and then our first inflow from GBTC. We also have news that Bitcoin hit 1 billion transactions. We also have another Bitcoin miner, Cipher, about to report earnings as well. We'll talk about them too and look over their chart. Now, first off, I want to show you Bitcoin. We did break out of our descending resistance. This blue line here was a resistance for us. We just broke out of it. I'll show you here on a shorter term time frame. You can see we saw the break. It looks like we're retesting it now. If we hold this level up, we might try to push back out of our 65,000 area, work our way back to the 67,000 resistance. We also have a potential for an inverse head and shoulders. We talked about this briefly on Discord. We have the first shoulder and the head here. If we start pulling back, either break into this trend line, find support here in this like 60,000 area, either in this trend line or out of it. If we see a bounce, this could be a potential inverse head and shoulders. So there is potential we see a little more of a pullback before we bounce like a springboard and start testing that 67,000 area. But it's all up to the market to decide. Maybe we go and test 67,000 now. I think what'll be really important is seeing what the ETFs post. Do we see more inflows from GBTC? Do we see more outflows from IBIT? Speaking of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, we did see a good day on Friday. We saw an overall inflow of $378 million, and GBTC posted a single day inflow of 63 million. And also the total net assets for the 3 Bitcoin ETFs in Hong Kong reach now 250 million and hold approximately 4,200 Bitcoin. But we did see Grayscale's first inflow. Fidelity saw a nice inflow of 103 million. BlackRock saw an inflow of 13 million after posting an outflow. And despite seeing a recent inflow from GBTC and an outflow from IBIT, I do still think we will see IBIT flip GBTC. This might take longer than expected if we continue seeing inflows from GBTC and outflows from IBIT, but they're now right around 1 billion away from crossing paths. IBIT now holds 274,000 Bitcoin in their account, and Grayscale holds 291,000, and they're about 1 billion from each other in assets under management. Soon I do think we're going to see a flip, but this week it'll be important to see, do we see a second inflow from GBTC, or was that a fluke last week? And IBIT, do we see another outflow? This might be one of the most important weeks to watch the spot Bitcoin ETFs, besides the week after the halving and besides the first week of launch. Bitcoin has now reached over 1 billion transactions, and that would be an average of 178,000 transactions per day. Now, while that's great for Bitcoin, for a little comparison, something like Venmo in 2016 passed 1 billion payments in a matter of a month. One thing to consider is, when's Bitcoin going to reach their next billion transaction? It's not going to take 15 years again. It's going to take a fraction of the time, going from 1 billion in transactions to 2 billion versus starting from zero. We also have CleanSpark's earnings coming up on May 9th. This is going to be a Thursday. In just a couple days, they are going to be reporting earnings, and I am expecting good things. Do I expect a repeat of last earnings where we went from under $10 to over $16 and had a 108% run in a matter of like a week? No, I don't think it's going to play out the same. On a good earnings, could we potentially see somewhere around a 20 to 30% pump, bringing us to 52-week highs? I think so, but it has to be a pretty good earnings. We have to see another profitable quarter. We have to see them somewhere around their revenue estimate. To me, the big thing is seeing a positive EPS. Last earnings, they did see a profitable quarter, and I do think it'll be a big thing to see 2 consecutive positive earnings quarters. Keep an eye on the level we're at now. This has been a previous topping out point. It has also flipped as support, so watch how we do at that 1750 area. If we start pushing up, I think our next resistance will be around this 19. This was where we topped out on our last run on good earnings. We went from the 8s all the way to about 19 before topping out, and pulling back from about 19 to around 15 before running again. I do think as we push higher, 19 will play out to be somewhat of a resistance, so look out for that level. And then on a break of 19, we can go on to push our previous high of 21. And then next comes a push towards our all-time highs of 24. If they come out with a really bad earnings, maybe we do fill our gap down to 10 to 12. Like I've said before, I don't see it. On a so-so earnings, I think we have potential to fall to $16 to $14 if the market wants to take it there. But I personally do think earnings will come out pretty good. Riot posted a relatively good earnings. They did miss their revenue expectation, but they did see a profitable quarter. And I do expect the same out of CleanSpark at the very least. We also have CIFR stock reporting earnings tomorrow, Tuesday the 7th. And they did see a profitable quarter last earnings. This will be important to see a second consecutive positive earnings. I really like Cipher stock, although I don't own it. This stock has performed quite well. It's around 10x from its bear market lows, similar to CleanSpark. Many other miners are only 3-4 times from their bear market lows. And Cipher and CleanSpark are neck and neck in terms of performance. One difference is it hasn't dropped much from its peak. Something like CleanSpark is still down roughly 40%, while Cipher is only down in the 20%. Seems like it held up quite well compared to other Bitcoin miners. I think their last earnings really helped them out there. Instead of the other miners that tanked, they gave a pretty good earnings, so it kept it afloat better. And I'm watching the general direction we're in here. We're utilizing this as a support, this more horizontal trend line as a support, as well as this more vertical trend line as a support. If we break this trend line, we're probably heading to our next trend line down here. If we start heading higher on good earnings, I do think this ascending resistance will be somewhat of a resistance for us. Right around the $6 area is where I'd expect Cipher to find a good bit of resistance if we do have a really nice run. And we might fill out this pattern, you know, we might kind of run on good earnings, find resistance, test this trend line, run again, fill out this pattern, and potentially see a drop. Typically, these types of patterns, you see a little break of a pattern. Maybe we break it to the upside on good earnings, maybe we break it to the downside on rough earnings, and then come to utilize our previous ascending support that we've been using for over a year now. Keep that in mind. But let me know what you guys are looking for this week. Let me know if there's any other Bitcoin miners that are reporting earnings this week that I might have missed. I know there's definitely more reporting this week. We also have a few reporting next week. Should be a very exciting week for the Bitcoin miners. And you should even watch those that you don't necessarily own just to get an idea of how earnings is coming out. So far, so good. We have seen some revenue misses, but we have seen positive earnings. We have seen profitable quarters, which is the big thing here. And also, it'll be very important to see what the ETFs give us. Do we see more outflows from GBTC or inflows? Do we see more inflows or outflows from IBIT? It seems like last week they kind of changed roles, where we saw IBIT, which was known for huge consecutive inflows. They had 70-something inflow days in a row, and then they just saw an outflow on the same week that GBTC, who saw nothing but outflows until that week, saw their first inflow. It's just funny to see how they changed roles after 3 months of basically doing the same thing. One was known for inflows, one was known for outflows, and on the same week they flipped to the other giving outflows and the other giving inflows. I just find it kind of strange. They're also 1 billion away from flipping. Maybe we're approaching something for GBTC, like a lower fee. Maybe it takes a lot longer for them to cross than I expect. But thanks as always for watching, guys. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you next time.